Welcome back. You're still watching the Friday edition of Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. Well, just before we went on that quick break, our conversation was on forging inclusive growth. We're looking at the place of small and medium enterprises in forging inclusive growth. And we know that the theme for this year's World Economic Forum Africa is on forging inclusive growth and creating jobs. And so that's been the line of the conversation in the last couple of minutes. And I've been talking to two SME practitioners who are still here with me in the studio. Uzo Nduka is an innovation and business expert, and Tosin Okoje, he's the Chief Executive Officer of Total Ascent, and they're still here with me in the studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sticking with us.
Thank you.
Well, just before we went on that quick break, I mentioned that post-rebasing, Nigeria has just done the rebasing of its GDP, and it's now the 26th largest economy in the world and the largest in Africa. But unemployment is still quite high. So, looking at it, how can Nigeria's growth strategies be more inclusive and create jobs through MSMEs?
Creating jobs is a specific undertaking. Let's not get things confused. You can have a lot of revenue, you can generate a lot of revenue with very few people. So if you take the oil and gas industry, for example, take a typical deep offshore facility. You have millions of dollars invested in it. If it's successful and the find is good, you'll be producing thousands of barrels of oil and or gas every day. All of that would translate into a lot of money. But everything there is more or less computerized. It's automated. You don't need more than a couple of hands to run. In fact, there are offshore platforms that are totally unmanned. You don't have one soul working on it. Totally unmanned. So you can generate a lot of revenue, which is good, by the way, make a lot of profit, but if you don't deal with the issue of creating jobs as a specific undertaking, and one that is important for economic, social, security, and a host of other reasons, if you don't deal with it like that, you're not going to see the results you want, irrespective of what your GDP is. There are sectors of the economy that everybody knows, it's not rocket science, that have the potential to create a lot of jobs in a fairly short space of time. Agriculture is one. Construction is another one. Everybody knows this all over the world. There's no rocket science to it. So I'm quite happy with some of the moves that the current administration in Nigeria is making, because they are beginning to pay attention to such sectors. They are beginning to make sure that resources are channeled into such sectors for not just for economic growth, but also for development, which has to do directly with things like how many unemployed hands do you have in your society. So that would be my contribution.
Okay, so now, Tosin, comment on this if you will. You know that there are different programs that the federal government has come up with, the You Win program, Shopee and the likes of it, that have been trying to encourage, people, who are actually MSME, entrepreneurs and the rest of it, to try to grow their business. But is this enough? Are these programs enough? Are there other ways that these MSMEs can be supported apart from these other programs that we have?
Okay, definitely. Well, first of all, I think the programs themselves are good in themselves, but not enough is being done. So to take you in, for example, you're taking small businesses that have good ideas, and you're forcing them first and foremost to put in place a business plan, which drives the thought process about making sure you have the right framework, you have the right structures. The government is also investing money in them in tranches that is ensuring that they're following through on that plan. They're increasing in size, they're hiring people, they're growing their businesses. So that's great. But in terms of scope, I think that it's something that's expandable. So those sort of programs are expandable. Ultimately, I feel that the best way to do it is really to create the enabling environment, an environment that encourages people, not necessarily just those that the government is funding, to do business. So the regulatory environment has to be improved on. It should be easier to set up a business, otherwise, and it should be cheaper. Otherwise, as a young entrepreneur with an idea, I would rather sit down, because I can't even come up with the funds to register, get legal advice in the CAC, and run through the number of hoops that is required to even start off. Also, in terms of the tax, one opportunity I feel is in terms of tax. In some countries, there are tax breaks for small businesses, because the first year is the most critical. 80% of businesses, small businesses, fail in that first year. And the more cash flow you have to be able to invest in the business, the better. Even after struggling through all that, as a small business, you come out with a little profit, and 40% of that goes away as corporate tax in the first year. So the sort of enabling environment that shows that as a government and as a nation, we're willing to encourage those sort of businesses to grow and expand, whether it's through regulation, whether it's through sort of policies we put in place, whether it's through programs like UWIN that will provide the sort of funding so that people can overcome the typical challenges, financing, skills, and the rest. If I might also add, I think an organization like SMEDAN has a much larger role to play than the role it plays currently in terms of equipping small and medium sales enterprises with the capacity, with the knowledge that they need. In some countries where that framework works out, the moment you register as a business, you're tied to some sort of agency of government that deals with small businesses, and it's their responsibility and their role to continue to make sure you're engaged, you're educated, you're informed, so that even programs like the WEF taking place, which has a huge impact on SMEs, that knowledge is disseminated, and some sort of feedback that can be taken to that forum is also gathered effectively.
Okay, Uzo, comment on this if you will. We just got this one. Developing SMEs is key to not only boosting economic growth, but also reducing the number of unemployed. But would you say there's an appropriate public policy framework for SME development, that Nigerian SMEs are getting the desired policy attention?
Difficult question, but in all honesty, I think that yes, there are some policies that this government has put in place. State governments, some of them are also trying and making effort at the state levels. Ogun State is a very good example. So I know a young man who is from Delta who came to Lagos to set up a poultry farm. And by the time he was done engaging with the authorities in Lagos, he decided it was better, worth his while, safer for him and his small business to go put his poultry farm in Ogun State. And within the first 6 months of operations, even though he's from Delta State and running his farm in Ogun State, he was able to join a cooperative group, and the government of the state gave him a small loan to encourage his business. Now, things like that at various levels are good. One of the things that worry me, I find disturbing each time this conversation comes up, is that let's not forget that business is about competition. You have to be competitive. It doesn't matter whether you're a micro or a small business or a medium one or a large one. You must remain competitive. Now, if you walk into an open market in Lagos to buy tomatoes, you will probably buy from the person whose offering is most fresh, and the quantity for the same price, it gives you best value. So that's competitiveness. Now, government programs sometimes become some sort of gratification. They become some sort of largesse. That is not good for the mindset of the SME operator. Every SME operator has to have their eyes sharp. They have to have everything ready to compete against a business in Ghana or Switzerland or in the US. You can't just live off government. So that sometimes becomes a knock-on effect that these programs create. In terms of policies, I think a lot more can be done. One of the things I'm very passionate about has to do with innovation. A lot of innovation comes from the SMEs sector or segment of the economy. And go try at our patent office in Nigeria to register a patent. Sometimes it takes you 2 years. I've been through that process. I'm still going through it today. For young businesses, you shouldn't expose them to that type of rigor. There has to be a way to make it easy to verify that whatever idea or innovation this small business owner has come up with truly and originally belongs to this person, and you register it quickly. So the person has intellectual property rights protection, and the person can confidently go to the market knowing that those rights will not be easily infringed upon. But that is not quite happening, and it's very disturbing.
Okay. Now, when Uzo was talking, he talked about being competitive. That's one issue that most MSMEs have in Nigeria. How can MSMEs begin to look at themselves or position themselves to be more competitive?
I think there are a couple of things that they need to do to be more competitive. One is, to be competitive, you need to have a good business model in place. So it's not a mom and pop shop, so as they say. You have a business that has a proper strategy, good positioning, good business management, good corporate governance framework. So you have a true business, not a hobby, as some people might have. And the way for SMEs to sort of position themselves or take advantage of that is they've got to be able to take advantage of initiatives like SMEDAN, for them to actually learn, or organizations that are willing to teach or bring or partner with them. Interestingly enough, when Uzo had spoken earlier about the engagement between SMEs and the banking sector, financial services, as being very, I think the word you used was
Exploitative.
Exploitative, exactly. It brought to mind, in certain countries, it's actually a partnership. If you're an SME and you've got an account with the bank, they actually have sections of the bank that are advisory, that whose job it is to also help you and help your business grow. Because there are certain things that are going to be critical to a business growing and growing properly. If you've got the right processes in place, like Uzo talked about being competitive, you have processes that work, you have the right controls in place, so you have the right sort of ethical conduct, you have good business managers who are making good decisions based on what they're seeing in the market. Those sort of things help a business to be competitive. It's not an issue of luck. You're a business that has a proper plan and you're sticking with the plan.
Yeah, but then some of these banks, or some lenders that we have in the country right now, actually have these advisory services, for customers who actually have accounts with them, for you to come and bank with them. So take loans or services from them for whatever business it is that you're putting together. And so it seems as if you're just totally trying to mark them X, in terms of not being supportive for the growth of SMEs.
May I make a comment here?
Yeah.
I agree some of our financial services institutions have those services, and they announce them. They are offering them to SME operators. The question we should ask is, send someone, or you go try access those services. They are very difficult to access. And sometimes you find out that the level of professionalism you expect, the quality of the advice you expect to gain from it, from such engagements, it's not there. It's not there. I mean, a banker who is truly supportive of an SME should be able, once they notice a major inflow, should be able to go call up the CEO of that company, that small business, and say, look, we just noticed a major inflow in your account. What are your plans for it? Let's sit down and talk about it. We are not going to interfere in your process. We will only help you, if you're interested, walk through how you're going to deploy that resource.
Be like a partner of some sort.
Exactly.
It has to be a partnership. Right now, it's not quite that. There are a few banks, a few institutions that are ahead of others. It's not right to mention names here, but a few are ahead of others.
Okay, so at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, one of the things that was actually mentioned was that if you target SMEs and you target women, because that's where they access the business sector, women and SMEs are kind of synonymous. But I'm thinking, how can this be applied in the context of Nigeria?
Well, first of all, there are two gentlemen here, so
Yes, there are two gentlemen
Yes.
here. But then,
But women, yes.
is it gender specific? For you to be an SME operator, you have to be a man. So which was the reason why this speaker actually brought, she's actually a woman, she's a director with the Bank of Botswana. She actually talked about it during one of the sessions, and she says targeting SMEs and targeting women is kind of, an important and integral part, of course, to trying to ensure that there's an inclusiveness, because we're talking about inclusive growth. But already you're trying to sound gender biased.
No.
And it shouldn't be that way.
I think, well, just to clarify, what I feel is those two groups actually have a role to play. And the reason why they're typically called out, SMEs and women, is that they've typically been underrepresented in those areas. So there's it's absolutely a great strategy to focus on those two groups. I was just trying to ensure that you realize that.
You know, my view on this. First, women naturally tend to make better managers than men. This is my personal view, and I don't have any statistics to back it up. But I believe that women tend to make better managers than men.
You have statistics to back it up. You have your wife, you have your sister, you have your mother. That's enough statistics to back it up.
Well,
you can't argue with that.
No, I can't. Now, on the other hand, I think that the greatest obstacles to the involvement and participation of women in an environment like Nigeria are really social, religious, and cultural. And that's where the government policy again has to come in play, has to help out here, so that those cultural, religious, and social obstacles are removed as a matter of deliberate action of government. Now, once that happens and the playing field is even for both men and women, then it's the individual's personal motivation and drive and ability to compete that should determine who is able to forge ahead in business and who is not able to. Some women are fierce competitors. I do business with some of them, and each time I have to go negotiate with them, I spend some time praying. They are fierce competitors, and that's a good thing. Yeah. So we must not stop them from doing business, from engaging in business, simply because they are women. Yeah.
So from everything that we've said today, definitely the SMEs have a place in forging inclusive growth, and as WEFA starts, so we're hoping that we'll see more SMEs, actually SME operators actually being there at that forum. But in the eventuality that you can't be there to make your case, or to even listen, or even to network with some of this industrialists and captains of industry that are going to be there, as well as policymakers from other countries as well, how are you going to try to see how maybe you can get your thoughts across to some of these people, to tell them that, look, we're good for business and we're good to collaborate with you?
Well, hopefully shows like this will help. I'm hoping that stakeholders are actually watching and are listening to some of the concerns that are being raised. But as Uzo also alluded to earlier, SMEs need to be a lot more collaborative and have a common voice. There has to be a platform for SMEs to at least be able to communicate the challenges they're facing, the opportunities that they see as well, because it's not only about challenges, it's also about opportunities that both parties can take advantage of to achieve the same goal, in terms of creating the right sort of environment for growth.
Some critics of the World Economic Forum have in various times referred to the forum as elitist. Now, I think on the side of the organizers, they should take deliberate steps to tone down that perception. And a good way to do it is within the time that's available, within the resources available, working within the boundaries of the security and other constraints, make deliberate effort to get SMEs across the industry and across the sectors involved in this. If it doesn't happen this time, then at the next meeting, something needs to be done about it, and rather quickly.
Thank you so much, Uzo, for sharing that thought with us. And Tosin, thank you also for coming on the program this morning. It's been an interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, I've been speaking to two SME practitioners, and we've been looking at the place of SMEs in forging inclusive growth. Tosin Okoje is the Chief Executive Officer of Total Ascent, and Uzo Nduka, he's an innovation and business expert. Well, thank you also for being part of the program. It's the last edition for the week, and of course, as you know, the markets are closed for the Easter holiday. It's a 4-day weekend, so try to make the most of it. But that's the program for today. We're back on Monday with a better and bigger package. I'm Harriet Agbinyi. Bye-bye.